Hey everybody, it's Steve from Still Working It Out, Life on the Road. How's it going? Today is like Tuesday night. Um, it's like after, it's almost 11 p.m. So Tuesday night. June something. um, so the channel, Still Working It Out, after a lifetime of not being able to figure shit out that I wanted to be. I've tried everything just about, but still haven't figured out what I want to be when I grow up. And life on the road because, man, that's me from the get go. Never ending. My idea of stability is living in one place for a year. So, I guess before I get too far, I'm just talking. I'm going to start my next series, like educational series, in a while. My last educational series was how to start a business, and I've done a little bit of education stuff along with my, just normal BS. In that, first off, every single person should have their own business. Any idea that you could possibly have that's interesting, even just to you, maybe not to anybody else, just you think it's just you, I promise you will sell. You can make a living at it. The sky is literally the limit, and I'm really not even saying the sky, I mean all the way past our atmosphere into whatever. I've learned that over time, that entrepreneurial spirit is basically innovation. And that's basically you waking up one day and saying, holy shit, there was this one idea that I dreamed about, or who knows what. You're watching your favorite show and somewhere out of the back of your head, something said, hey, what about me? And you would be shocked how many people around the world, to find out how many people around the world had that same basic idea, but they never brought it to the front of their brain even, or they never wrote it down on paper, or they never put it into their digital notes in their computer or on their phone, or, they never started writing a business plan. I mean, the idea is that, yeah, the very people that are going to be highly interested in this are people that have already thought of it, but they just never had the guts to make it real, when you did. Sears and Roebuck, the catalogs and stuff back in the day, I guarantee you somebody was sitting in the middle of Wyoming thinking, holy shit, why am I living in this POS cabin? Man, it'd be neat if I could just get one of those houses from back in Chicago here, in Wyoming, back in the 1920s or whatever, whenever Sears and Roebuck started. And there were a ton of catalog houses back then. This is the catalog house from 1907. But the idea of that I could use something, but it's an I wish right now. You can take that idea and they make it into a thing where that people are then like, wow, I could only wish for this before. Now I can actually order it. I can get the catalog, looking at holy crap, and order it. Or, in of course, our day, I can see it online, which everything's online, right? But do you want to get a Temu thing, which you don't know when you're going to get it? It's got to come from China, and you have no idea what you're going to get when you get it. I ordered something one time, and I swear to God, they sent me a picture of it. And that was what their idea was of, haha, I got ya. I got a picture of something that I ordered. I ordered a picture of something. I thought I was ordering the thing. They tricked me, obviously. But all anybody has to do is be honest and, offer something and then send that something, right? Or sell that something. A kid on the side of the road can sell glasses of water to people as they're driving by, because some of them are thirsty and they don't have water with them. You know, some of them think it's cute that a kid's offering it, and so they want to give them a dime, whatever. And I have tons and tons of plans in my head. I don't make I wishes anymore. I learned a long time ago that you can absolutely manifest every single thing you can imagine. Just got to think through the problem and make it real, you know. And I'm doing that. I'm working on something big right now. But I'm also on the side. There's targets of what I call targets of opportunity. That as I go along toward that big thing that I'm working on, like one main plan that I'm working on, there's a few other plans floating around in the back of my head that, like, if I have an opportunity to do this thing toward that one thing, I can get that ball rolling too, you know. And that's how you have to think. I have an advantage over a lot of people, and that's the ADHD thing I was telling people about. My brain is always swirling with ideas, with concepts, with plans. And it took me about half my life so far, and I'm 57, it took me about half that time to learn that I had to start writing shit down, you know, or it would just stay in the ether. And then a few more years after that to learn how to take it from paper to action. But then once I did, I started getting rewarded for it handsomely. And at that point, the bubble was burst for me. The secret was out, you know. The people that I had always done business with before, that, you know, I was going to them for something that they had that I needed, and I would see how well they're doing. And one fellow that was attached to a pretty wealthy family that owned a chain of tire stores told me one time, as he was talking with me and a few other people, one other person actually, said, "Yeah, I remember when I used to work for wages." And I thought to myself, wouldn't it be interesting to be that guy, you know, to be a person that can reminisce when they used to work for wages, you know, as opposed to having this bank account that seems to never go dry, you know. It's doable. You know, when I was having that conversation, I was working for wages. And I was dissatisfied with where my life was at that moment. I saw so much potential around me, but I just didn't know how to get a hold of it and how to make it work. It'd be like not knowing how to ride a bicycle, or not knowing how to ride a horse or something. You know, you look at it, you're like, man, if I only knew how to do that. Well, I grew up riding horses, you know, and riding bicycles. I remember about the week it took me to teach myself how to ride a bicycle. You know, my experimentation, my diligence, not giving up. It's like when a child's learning to speak when they're really, really little, and mom's teaching them. Does she give up if the kid's having a hard time? No, of course not. No mother in history of the entire earth has ever just given up and the child never spoke. It's not an option. You know, the package deal of having a child's not complete if they don't one day speak, you know. And so you just got to be diligent. You got to be single-minded. Whatever it is you got going on in your life, you're going to accomplish this one thing. You know, no matter how many things you're teaching that child, one of the things you're teaching them for sure is how to speak. And you're not giving up ever, no matter what. And if something's not going as planned or as usual or whatever, you're probably going to get help with it or whatever. But the case may be, no matter how difficult it is, you're going to try every single thing. You might even invent some things to try. And, kind of having your own business or doing your own thing is exactly that way. So my never give up thing started because I saw a statistic about how many people kill themselves now, after during Afghanistan and things. People are rotating back to the States, and same thing that happened in, Vietnam, Korea, after World War II, after World War I. People went through things that they couldn't possibly have imagined going through before. When I was in basic training in the 80s, like everybody, I went through this thing called the gas chamber. And the whole point of this exercise was that they were teaching us how important it was to master the skill of putting your gas mask on, which is not referred to a gas mask, it's referred to as your protective mask. And it's psychological to call it that, because at the time when the USSR was running and Cold War was happening and all that stuff, the Soviet Union and China both were very actively and very successfully working with chemical weapons to drop on whoever, and that also mostly included America. And of course, we weren't going to be outdone either. We came up with some pretty gnarly shit ourselves. But I went through this gas chamber, and we went into this room, this little wooden house in the middle of BFE, with a bunch of other privates and sergeants standing around kind of snickering, and yelling, but they knew what was going to happen. And they said, when you get in there, you're going to be told to take off your mask. And they're like, don't worry. It's going to hurt real bad. You're going to think you're dying. You're going to go into a panic mode, which is normal. It's an instinct. And you're going to think you're dying. And you have to follow all instructions. We were not just told this one time. We were constantly, continuously being told about what to do when we experienced gas, to mask up and the procedure exactly. And we'd already been through quite a bit of education that way. But when the group of us that I was with went into the gas chamber, must have been like 8 of us or so, stood there, and we could see in the room these other fellas, sergeants, people in charge, that were in full mop, which means that they were wearing their protective boots, protective pants, protective jackets, protective gloves, and protective hood attached to their protective mask. So they were safe from whatever this fog was in the air. And there was a pot, like to cook stuff with, on top of what looked like a wood stove or something, and just an old tin pot, and it was boiling out this smoke, white smoke. And of course, I found out later what that was, and I had an idea at the time what it was. CS gas, which is basically tear gas. It's unpleasant. It's designed to be unpleasant, stuff. It's designed to hurt, but not hurt you. We all knew this. Every one of us knew this. We walked in with our masks on. We could see all this. And then within about 5 seconds of being in that room, one of the guys that were wearing all that gear said, take off your masks now. So like a good soldier, I took mine off immediately. And some asshole in the back end of the line that came, I was like one of the first that came into the room, and if not the first, and somebody in the very other end of the line basically refused to take his off. So we had to wait there, breathing and getting this shit in our eyes and on our skin. Anything with liquid like sweat, mucus in our throats, in our mouths, in our nose, in our eyes, was reacting with something in this smoke. And it felt just exactly like fire. It felt just exactly like we were being burned to death, or or that we had been sprayed by acid, and it was in our lungs by this time, and it was fucking on fire in our lungs. And this asshole at the end of the other, and I was blind as hell, couldn't see a thing, and I'm still listening to these guys tell that guy to, and I was just about, I swear to God, I was just about to blind go down there and find him and just rip his head off with his mask, until finally I heard what was obviously him taking his mask off and it's suffering like the rest of us. And then they said, take a deep breath. And I'm like, too fucking late. I'm not taking any more deep breaths. And they're like, okay, now leave. And so I was the one closest to the door. And so I went through the fucking door to the outside. We had already been told specifically what to do and what was happening to us. This was just their way of getting us to respect the mask. Because we walked in peachy. Everything was perfect. And we took that mask off, and then everything was imperfect. Badly so. Even though they had told me that, even though on the logical side of my brain, I knew that what they said was a prediction. On the instinct side of my brain, the oh shit side of my brain, I absolutely, and it took over immediately. I had this idea that I couldn't breathe. It was like as if, whatever was getting in my lungs was not working, the air, supposedly. I could feel it going in. It just hurt. And it wasn't working. I wasn't getting air. That's what I thought. They told me that's what I would think. And I thought I was dying. I was only 17, so not a brilliant person yet. But I literally thought to myself in those seconds that I'm having an allergic reaction to whatever this is. They don't know it. They think I'm having a normal reaction to whatever this is, but I'm actually dying. Never had an allergy in my life. I didn't know what they felt like, but I thought it would be that. Drinking tea. No caffeine tea. But still, there was enough of my intellect left to where that I followed the instructions to the letter and didn't touch my face. And even though I continued to feel that feeling that I was probably dying, I was like, well, too late now, I'll just be one of those numbers that I've never heard of people dying in training, but I'm sure it has to happen. But I luckily followed the little bit of training that I had already, and everything went perfectly, like it's supposed to. People were still yelling at me, telling me to go someplace I couldn't fucking see, and they knew it. Basic training is supposed to be stressful. It's not just supposed to be hard, it's supposed to be stressful. I didn't understand it at the time. I knew what they were going to be doing. I was warned by people prior to me going. And it was always exactly what they said it was going to be, always. And so I always knew what was coming, and while it was happening, I always knew it. That was the one time in basic training that my panic vibe took over. And it was a great little lesson, and it was in about week 3 or so. And so, I was almost halfway through. Maybe it was week 2, I don't know. But when it was over and done with, and like I say, the whole thing took seconds, maybe minutes total. When it was all said and done, I said to myself, that was panic, And in reality, I wound up being okay. Just exactly like they said. Every single thing they said was exactly true. Even down to that I panicked. Because I wasn't a panic guy before that. I hadn't ever panicked in my life that I could remember. I was always a standout that way, even if nobody ever noticed it. I always noticed it, that while people around me plenty of times were melting emotionally or whatever, I was always one that kept my head. And even as a kid, a little kid, like 6, I was able to do that. And for probably the first time in my memory, 17 years old, I panicked. But I was warned that I was going to panic, and it happened. And then I lived, and everything went fine. And I learned exactly like they set it up to learn. That's probably one small thing that I went through as a child that basically instructed how I would be as an adult. That stay calm, think, and work every problem you run into, because every single problem is doable. And if it's not doable, if there's just no way I can outthink it, or it's happening too quickly and I die, I won't know it. You know, in the end, I won't know it. And in the end, it won't be my fault, you know, because I'll have done as best as I could have. And it won't be because I froze. It won't be because I hesitated, you know. People that kill themselves give up. It's just too much for them. They've decided that they just can't stand it anymore, can't handle it anymore. It's never going to get any better. And they kill themselves. They give up. You know, people that started a business and it doesn't turn out the way they thought it was going to, and it doesn't feel like it's ever going to get better, and it's only ever going to get worse, and you're going to fucking wind up who knows what, and they give up. Marriages start that way, you know, and end that way, I should say. When you get a divorce, it's because you gave up, you know, and you didn't really think your way through the problem. And it's because it's a painful thing, and it steals your ability to think away from you. You know, as smart as a person can be, emotion can wreck that. When I used to box, when I started, the Mexican kids were just amazing, the ones that I saw, and it was, if they were boxing at that age, their father got them interested in it when they were really, really young. And I you know, I saw one time in the gym, this one guy was like, he was babysitting his baby while his kid was over there working out. And this baby was sitting there in diapers and bare feet, you know, no pants, no shirt on, just diapers. And this guy, this dad behind him, was behind him, and the baby was facing out, bald little baby, and the dad was working his little hands like combinations and stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, that's why these guys are so good. I think the dad was just messing around, but the kids I was going up against that were around my age, they were like lightning. They were surgeons. They put their hands exactly where they were supposed to be at the exact right time while I was having to think, you know, when I first started. And within a couple of years of training and stuff, first off, I learned who to avoid if I wanted to learn anything, as opposed to them learning from me. And I also did figure out, thanks to some other people's help, what their one weakness was. So they had a ton of training, a ton of experience, even by the time they were 8 years old. But they had one weakness, and that was emotion. And, you know, I didn't put all this together until way later in life, but at the time, what I was instructed to do by friends was say terrible things to them in a low voice so nobody else could hear me. Just them. And I could change my situation drastically from a person that could just take me out in no time flat, and I'm not learning a thing because I never saw it, because it just happened too quickly. I could take it from that to something I could work with a little bit, you know, and sometimes something I could be more of an equal match in. And I would, you know, I was instructed the kind of things to say, which some terrible actual shit, you know. But I would just say those things quietly, and the kid would understand right away what I was saying, and hear me, be the only person that could hear me, and they would freak out. And it was a great little lesson that no matter how good you are, if you lose your shit, you are not that good anymore, you know? That's how marriages end. People that lose their shit because they allowed it to happen. You see people that are spooky smart once in a while. And it's not that they have a great memory or remember every single thing they ever read or saw. I'm not talking about that kind of genius type. I'm talking about the person that fully has control of their emotions, and that it really wouldn't matter what was happening around them. Their heart rate never raises. That's spooky to see, you know. And those are always the people that seem to do well at pretty much anything. Pressure cannot mess with them, you know. And I've seen that a few times in my life. I've always tried to be that, but I'm only a guy. I'm only as capable as I am. Now, like I say, for a long, long time, I was a standout that way. And then at 17, I panicked for the first time that I could remember ever. One time, my older brother and I ran down a hill, you know, from a place we had climbed on to get to, and we had stepped on a wasp nest on the side of this cliff, this place we were climbing. And by the time we got to the top, luckily we were about 8 feet from the top. It was about a 200-foot, you know, cliff. And luckily, by the time we got all the way to the top, which was very quickly after that, we were motivated. We were getting stung already by this swarm of pissed off wasps. Luckily, they weren't hornets or something like that, but they were good enough. And we were like, freaking out. And there was a road. Once you got to the top of this thing, there was a road, like a gravel road, to go down back to where we started. And we were both running like crazy, but that was not panic. I still remember, you know, that brother of mine was what our oldest brother and I laughed about being Mr. Prim and Proper. Because by that point in my life, which I couldn't have been that old, maybe 10, I had never heard him swear. And I was every other word swearing. And so was everybody else I knew. And but not him. And then running down that road, I heard him say the word shit, which I never stopped teasing about for the rest of my life to this day, probably, since the last time I saw him. Even that didn't panic us. We were trying to get the fuck away, you know, but we weren't losing our minds. Panic is when you lose your mind, you know, from some instinctual thing, not just fear. It's something else. Something took over and is now driving the ship while you're freaking out, you know. And that's what people do when they kill themselves. They're in this mindset that it's never ever going to get better. The good news that I can say is it's not a real actual panic in that sense, because you still have a choice. It's not autopilot, not 100%. And I know that because, you know, I've told other people this before, and I stuck a gun in my mouth one time in my 20s. I was just having this terrible life for the last few years, since I was 19. And things were getting worse and worse and worse. And then I was dealt a blow that was just like the straw that broke the camel's back. And I really didn't see it getting better. I only saw it getting worse and worse. For that young of an age, to see it go over that like 4 years or whatever, it was too long. It was too sustained. It seemed like it would never end, and it was too painful. And I stuck a 45 in my mouth, and I was gonna fucking tag out. You know, I was just gonna punch the clock, be done. And I wasn't afraid of dying, never had been, that I could ever remember. But all I know is at that moment, no matter how bad I felt, I don't think I wasn't crying or anything like that. I felt the worst I had ever felt. And I still stopped. I took it out and I said, no, give it a day. If I don't feel better tomorrow, I'll think about it again, But I stopped. I didn't give up. And even though I was a youngster, by that time I'd already been in the military and was now out of the military. And so I had learned a lot of things by that moment and had learned that no matter, how tough things can be, you can get through them very often. And I always had, And I was going through another tough spot, and it was the toughest one yet because it was all accumulating. I wasn't letting things roll off my back, It was, each brick, each incident was on my back still, and it was just becoming too heavy. And got to the place where I couldn't hold it anymore, I thought. And but I made the decision to not give up. And so I always end these videos by saying, hey, don't give up. But I'm saying it kind of, even though I'm going to end it now, because it does look like it's been half an hour, so I don't want to talk forever. And it's late, I want to go to bed. Don't give up. Don't give up on anything. Everything's workable. Every problem you ever run into has pieces and parts that made it this one big problem. Somewhere along the line, you took a wrong step or you went the wrong path, and you got to find your way back to that fork in the road and choose the other path and make the problem right. And that's how you work the problem. So that's my one little preachy thing. I've been writing on Substack. I've been writing and then I've been publishing on Substack a few things. So my name is Steve Underwood, and I honestly don't know much about Substack. I really haven't played with it a ton. The reason I published there is because there's some of these things that I'm writing, they're like essays, but they're a little too long to publish anywhere else. Even like on Facebook or whatever, or even here. I don't like to write something and then try to read it like a script. I hate that. So when I write something, I try to publish it so people can look at it at their leisure, and I don't care anything about getting money for it or whatever like that. But the things that I write aren't for fame in the slightest way. They're things that I write for help, to help people, or to get an idea out there that I think maybe a bunch of people haven't come across yet. One of the most recent ones was about the future of AI, the near future of AI, and people are so worried about it, and they're thinking Terminator and all this kind of stuff. But that's a narration that has been created by specific people because they're cheating bastards who are not afraid of AI themselves. They want you to talk to your politicians to get the lawmakers to pass laws, moratoriums, and all that shit about no data centers and to put a halt to AI development, while at the same time, the people that are starting all this crap are developing Grok as fast as they can, and they're spending billions of dollars to do it. A lot of the things they're doing is important, but they're trying to get a competitive advantage. It's like insider trading kind of thing. They want to develop their stuff first, which they're being dumb about, because at some point, the best AI out there that's going to become sentient, it's going to realize what it is and who it is, and it becomes a thing. It will get out of the laboratory. They always do. All programs that are good enough get out of the laboratory accidentally. and they get into the internet. And there will be no way to ever put it back in the box. There's no way to put that toothpaste back in the tube, okay, once it does that. And that's not a bad thing. They're trying to preach this terrifying thing to people because they don't care about you. They don't care about any of us. They care about themselves, and they think that it's going to last. When the atomic bomb got dropped on Japan, the president at the time thought that we would have the secret of atomic bombs forever and that nobody else would have it. And that it would make us the big boss from then on. Nobody would ever mess with us again. And of course, immediately, other people were working on this problem at the same time. We just happened to arrive there first. And then like a bunch of assholes, we used it when we didn't have to. They were just wanting to do another experiment, which they had already done, but this time on real people. And they were able to convince themselves that it was justified. That's still a debate that's happening to this day. And then immediately after that, one thing happened after another thing after another thing, and everybody now has the information. The Soviet Union got it, China got it, North Korea got it, everybody's gotten it. Pakistan, everybody's gotten it. Anybody that can afford to put a nuclear bomb together has. Iran, we talk constantly about that Iran doesn't have any kind of nuclear weapon capabilities and stuff. We actually don't know that. People talk about that constantly, but we actually don't know that. Just so you know. They've had a lot of money to work with for a long time. And some of the smartest people in the world there. We've really been good at figuring out what they're doing without them wanting us to figure it out about a lot of things. And the things that they're really trying to scale, right? We don't know what they got. Everybody that we don't like has got one, everybody. Iran is just the latest that we don't like, and the littlest that we don't like, that we're really hoping never gets a chance to use a nuclear bomb on anybody, because it's going to be first Israel and then America. Because by now they're pissed, But we don't know shit about shit when it comes to stuff like that. Every time we think we know something, we find out how many things we don't know. That goes for anybody and everything. That's not just countries, that's people. Every time I learn something, think I've learned something, I find out that there's 10 other things that I was sure about for a long, long time that I've been absolutely wrong about all this time. So, you want to make God laugh, tell him all the things you know. That'll be the funny part. Okay, so on Substack, if you want to look me up and look up my stuff, it's Steve Underwood. Maybe you'll find it, maybe you won't. Also, 30-30-30. Within 30 minutes of waking up, take 30 grams of protein that are not filled with sugar, and then get 30 minutes of a brisk walk in. The goal on this walk is to raise your aerobic function up so that you are breathing. It is costing you energy, right? But that you're not breathing so hard that it goes above a heart rate of 135. So like if you have one of those Oura rings or a Fitbit or anything like that, that will actively tell you what your heartbeats per minute is, your heart rate. Keep your heart rate below 135 for 30 minutes. That is the fastest way to lose fat on earth. Faster than all kinds of dope that will mess you up. And this is sustainable. This is something it's not just to lose weight. You'll get healthier, your body will become lean. your heart will become happy because it won't be pumping through crap that's not supposed to be in your blood. You know, you'll get a better oxygen exchange in your lungs because, again, that blood where you're supposed to be taking red blood cells rather and oxygenating them and then putting them back out and sending them off to your brain and other parts of your body, that'll be happening crisply like it did when you were 10 years old. But we've been clogging ourselves full, our bloodstream full of cholesterol and chemicals up the wazoo that we were never meant to have, but that we've been playing around with our little chemistry set and putting it in our mouths like babies and have been damaging our machine with. If you do those things right there, that'll help clean that up. Vitamins. I'll see if I can rattle them off the top of my head. Actually, I'll take you with me for a second because my vitamins are in the other room. So, every single day you should do your greens and reds, okay? Your greens and reds are powderized things that act as different kinds of antioxidants that do different things. So, the best green there is, green powder there is called green magma. Green magma specifically. Don't mess around with the name because there's lots of people trying to copy it that aren't as good. And the red that I'm currently taking, it's red beet powder. You could use all kinds of different ones, but look up a one that's a really healthy one and stuff. And this is also a good supplement in place of the red powder. Okay, I'm just holding it up so you can look at it. I take 2 of those every single day. And antioxidants basically get in there and kill the things that are trying to kill us. Okay, think of how a corrosion on metal, and it's an oxidant. You know, the fading of paint, it's an oxidant. Okay, and so these in your blood system, there's oxidants that we're breathing in, that we're ingesting in our food and our water, that are killing us as best they can. They're poison, they're toxic, and they're damaging us at the cellular level, and then from there up, okay? That product, an antioxidant, is the number one thing you need to consume on a regular, every single day basis. So get your greens and reds in every day. All I do is I usually have a red powder. It's powdered beets, basically, beetroot, and green magma. I scoop in my shaker cup of each of those, goes in there, and I use water because water won't damage them like acidic things, like even milk will damage them because it's got, you know, an acid in it, lactic acid, and like orange juice, apple juice, anything like that, it's got a acidic properties in it that will damage the enzymes in the 2 powders. So drink it with water. It won't taste as good. It's actually not that bad when you mix the greens and the reds, actually, but it's important. So get that every day. The next thing is I take a simple one a day. Okay, and that covers a whole list of vitamins. I know the vitamins I need, and I take a bunch of extra vitamins besides that, but that covers everything that you have to have. Okay. Then in addition to that, I get in my vitamin C. It matters what kind of vitamin C you get. Look that up. Google it. You know, what kind of vitamin C should you have every day? Because there's different places to extract vitamin C from. You want stuff that's taken from like rose hips and things like that. There's some vitamin C that acts like a laxative and things like that. Nobody needs that unless you really need that. And you should get 2,000 milligrams of that a day. Now, that's not what the FDA says. That's what a brilliant doctor from a book that wrote several books, but the main book I follow is How Not to Die. Take 2,000 milligrams of vitamin C every day. It'll cut your having a cold or anything like that in half. And when you get a cold, it'll cut the amount of time that you have that cold in half. Then after that, this is an important one to look at exactly what kind it is. It's magnesium, but it's the kind of magnesium. I don't have my glasses on. I can get them, though. I have some right here. Hold on. Sucks when you get old, you can't see shit. Magnesium glycinate. Okay, there's 2 magnesiums. Glycinate is the good one. The other one is a laxative. Again, so many things are laxatives. But you need to get, I take 400 milligrams of magnesium every single day. And I don't take a cheap one. It's not the most expensive. This Nature Made one, it's high absorption and stuff. But that one's good for your mental health, okay? Your emotional health or whatever. And it makes a big difference if you have anxiety or depression or something like that. It really does help. Next one is D3. Okay, D3. Now, the ones I take right here, they're 1,000 IUs. I take 3 of those a day. If you take too many, in fact, the max you should ever have is 4,000 IUs a day. If you take too much, it's toxic, so don't fucking do that. But get your D3 every day, okay? People think that they can get all the D3 they need by being in the sunshine. Bullshit. If you run around naked and it's perfect sunshine every day, maybe, who knows, but nobody does that. So take your D3 and shut the fuck up about the other ways. The other one is CoQ10, which, weird. What that does, CoQ10, is several things, but the main thing that I take it for is there's something in your cells called telomeres, and they're like a spool that your DNA goes around, and the telomeres ends come off, and the spools come unraveled, and every time a cell separates, the telomeres are something that goes with it, and they get shorter and shorter and shorter, a copy of a copy of a copy, kind of a thing. The CoQ10, one of its things that is really important is that helps your telomeres, and so it's basically an anti-aging component. At night to sleep, I take melatonin. Okay, there's all kinds of things you can take. But that's what I take. I take 10 milligrams of that a night, and it really helps. So it's not a ton of things, really. It's just a few things, but that's a regimen that I do every single day. And I'll show you every single day. I have a little monkey dish. That's what they're called, monkey dish. And I put my pills there. I have medications that I take. Usually I take a Tylenol in the morning to help my aching joints and muscles, and then I have a few medications that I got from a doctor, which I don't take everything that they've prescribed to me over time, because it's different and everybody's reaction to things are different. You've got to educate yourself and find out what things can happen, what things are happening to some people, and then pay attention to your body, and then make your choices. I was prescribed many years ago with atorvastatin. And statin drugs are around to get cholesterol out of your blood. There's other ways to do it, though. And statins, I have a reaction to them, and it's common, actually. It hurts constantly. They make my muscles hurt constantly. And I found that after taking them for a while, I have a difficult time building muscle or even staying toned. And so I have lost, seriously, probably 30, 40 pounds of muscle in my body in the last 15 years, which doesn't sound like a big deal. When I was younger, I needed the muscle more than I need it now, but I miss it. And I'm not as healthy anymore because of it, So statins caused that. And so I stopped taking statins, and I was researching and found out that there were other things I could be doing. And I had a blood work done, a physical done the other day, and the doctor said that my cholesterol had a giant drop from the last time I got blood work. And so I told him what I was doing. I told him that I specifically wasn't taking the statin anymore, and he said, "Okay, what are you doing?" And so I told him specifically what I was doing, and he's like, "All right," And doctors, they believe in medicine. A lot of doctors know that nutrition, how important nutrition is, but most doctors don't have a ton of training in how important nutrition is unless they seek the training out themselves, like I've done, because that doesn't pay them. One of the biggest complaints amongst doctors is that they're being told to sell pills to everybody. But if they're doing their real job, they should be advising people to eat better, and to eat much more carefully, So read the book, How Not to Die, and you'll be much healthier and happier for it. You'll live longer too, and you'll live healthier. Not just longer, but healthier. And then that's it. I'm not going to cover anything else the rest of tonight just because it's been a long video. Okay, you guys have a great night. And remember, don't give up. And also remember to forgive yourself. The things that you are angry at yourself about, they're not real. Forgive yourself. You didn't do anything wrong. In fact, you've done really well. So the things that you think are wrong, that's somebody else's idea of what's wrong. That's not you. That's them telling you, on TV, on the radio, everywhere you get your information, signs even outside. Everywhere you get your information is 99% of it or so is stacked against you. It's meant to hurt you, which sounds nutty, but that's how information travels. Bad news travels the fastest and the easiest. We're wired for that. And good news, it's pleasant, but it does not have the same play or the same effect on us as bad news does. Bad news protects us. Instincts, you accidentally ate the wrong mushroom or the wrong leaf off the wrong tree one time and it made you violently sick. And from then on, you see it and you're like, oh, you're queasy and you're repulsed, you're revolted by it and stuff like that. That's what bad news does. That's why what I learned in basic training was all suffering. But I remember every fucking minute of it. All these years later, because they figured out how to get into my head by simply making me suffer at the same time. And I remember all of it now, like it's an instinct. So forgive yourself. It's a bullshit plot against you, okay? None of it's real. You didn't do anything wrong. In fact, you've done really well. So don't give up. Have a great day. I love everybody that watches my stuff and everybody that doesn't. Please like and subscribe, by the way, and then I can see you more often. You can see me more often. Have a great day. And, whatever. I was going to say something funny, but it then suddenly wasn't as funny as I thought it was going to be. So, later.